Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us again today for another episode of Sankofa Inner City Cultural League virtual after school program. Um, I've been thinking a lot about the lessons that we're doing, and the last lesson that I did was on peer pressure, and the one before that, Mr. Williams did on good decision making. So I was thinking to myself, like, what are some things that I have to make good decisions on, and some things that may give me a little bit of pressure that maybe students can relate to as well. And something that I came up with is actually something that I have to do when I leave work today, which is go to the grocery store. So when I go to the grocery store, there's a lot of pressure from those cookies and those chips and those candies on the shelves. As I'm walking down the aisle, I'm minding my business. In my head, I have a list. I'm like, okay, I need to get vegetables. I need to get fruits. I'm going to do this whole 2021 is going to be, like new year, new body type of thing. And then I walk down the aisles and it seems like the cookies all know my name. All the different chips know my name. They're like, hey, Kristen, hey, you deserve this. You've been working really hard. You've been doing great with your eating habits, everything in moderation, right? Come on, get us. We're on sale. We're on sale. And then I'm like, okay, I get them. And I trick myself into thinking I'm going to eat just one. And half a bag later, my pants are not fitting like they're supposed to fit. So today I'm going to talk to you guys about what sugar and different foods do to your brain, because we know what it can do to your body. We know that if you're not eating the stuff that maybe you should be eating, then your clothes are going to fit a little bit tighter. You're not going to feel as good when you're walking around in your clothes. You're going to have to go up a size, all that good stuff. We know what it does to your body, but what does it do to your brain? What does it do to your organs on the inside? So I have a couple of videos that I'm going to share with you, and these videos are TED, I think they're TEDx videos. Let me double check before I give you the name of that. I am going to share my screen, like I said, so you will be able to see. Let's see. TED Ed, not TEDx, TED Ed. And these are one of my favorite videos as far as educational videos, because it's like the TED Talks, but they're very educational. They have people on here that specialize in these different topics, and they give you a lot of great information within just a few minutes. So I have two different videos today. Let me share my computer sound so you can be able to hear it. And this one is a big one, how sugar affects the brain, because as much as I love to eat healthy, I think I love sugar just a little bit more. I have a love-hate relationship with sugar, because a lot of times, like, I'll eat the sugar, and as soon as I'll say, okay, well, I'm just gonna have a little bit of candy, and then I just keep eating it, and it wants me to eat all of it. And I'm like, okay, no, I can't eat all of you right now. And the candy's like, of course you can. You gotta eat us. We're gonna go bad. And I'm like, your expiration date is like 3 years from now, which is another thing that's not really great. If you have something that has an expiration date of like a year or more, then it's probably not the best thing to put into your body. The best things to put into your bodies are fresh fruits and vegetables, and those things expire within days. Keep that in mind.
Picture warm, gooey cookies, crunchy candies, velvety cakes, waffle cones piled high with ice cream. Is your mouth watering? Are you craving dessert? Why? What happens in the brain that makes sugary foods so hard to resist? Sugar is a general term used to describe a class of molecules called carbohydrates, and it's found in a wide variety of food and drink. Just check the labels on sweet products you buy. Glucose, fructose, sucrose, maltose, lactose, dextrose, and starch are all forms of sugar. So are high fructose corn syrup, fruit juice, raw sugar, and honey. And sugar isn't just in candies and desserts. It's also added to tomato sauce, yogurt, dried fruit, flavored waters, or granola bars. Since sugar is everywhere, it's important to understand how it affects the brain. What happens when sugar hits your tongue? And does eating a little bit of sugar make you crave more? You take a bite of cereal. The sugars it contains activate the sweet taste receptors, part of the taste buds on the tongue. These receptors send a signal up to the brainstem, and from there it forks off into many areas of the forebrain, one of which is the cerebral cortex. Different sections of the cerebral cortex process different tastes: bitter, salty, umami, and in our case, sweet. From here, the signal activates the brain's reward system. This reward system is a series of electrical and chemical pathways across several different regions of the brain. It's a complicated network, but it helps answer a single subconscious question. Should I do that again? That warm, fuzzy feeling you get when you taste Grandma's chocolate cake? That's your reward system saying, yes. And it's not just activated by food. Socializing, sexual behavior, and drugs are just a few examples of things and experiences that also activate the reward system. But overactivating this reward system kickstarts a series of unfortunate events: loss of control, craving, and increased tolerance to sugar. Let's get back to our bite of cereal. It travels down into your stomach and eventually into your gut. And guess what? There are sugar receptors here too. They're not taste buds, but they do send signals telling your brain that you're full, or that your body should produce more insulin to deal with the extra sugar you're eating. The major currency of our reward system is dopamine, an important chemical or neurotransmitter. There are many dopamine receptors in the forebrain, but they're not evenly distributed. Certain areas contain dense clusters of receptors, and these dopamine hotspots are a part of our reward system. Drugs like alcohol, nicotine, or heroin send dopamine into overdrive, leading some people to constantly seek that high. In other words, to be addicted. Sugar also causes dopamine to be released, though not as violently as drugs. And sugar is rare among dopamine-inducing foods. Broccoli, for example, has no effect, which probably explains why it's so hard to get kids to eat their veggies. Speaking of healthy foods, let's say you're hungry and decide to eat a balanced meal. You do, and dopamine levels spike in the reward system hotspots. But if you eat that same dish many days in a row, dopamine levels will spike less and less, eventually leveling out. That's because when it comes to food, the brain evolved to pay special attention to new or different tastes. Why? 2 reasons. First, to detect food that's gone bad. And second, because the more variety we have in our diet, the more likely we are to get all the nutrients we need. To keep that variety up, we need to be able to recognize a new food, and more importantly, we need to want to keep eating new foods. And that's why the dopamine levels off when a food becomes boring. Now back to that meal. What happens if in place of the healthy, balanced dish, you eat sugar-rich food instead? If you rarely eat sugar, or don't eat much at a time, the effect is similar to that of the balanced meal. But if you eat too much, the dopamine response does not level out. In other words, eating lots of sugar will continue to feel rewarding. In this way, sugar behaves a little bit like a drug. It's one reason people seem to be hooked on sugary foods. So think back to all those different kinds of sugar. Each one is unique, but every time any sugar is consumed, it kickstarts a domino effect in the brain that sparks a rewarding feeling. Too much too often, and things can go into overdrive. So yes, overconsumption of sugar can have addictive effects on the brain. But a wedge of cake once in a while won't hurt you.
Okay, so that was how sugar affects your brain. Now we're going to see how the food that you eat affects your gut or your tummy.
Trillions of bacteria, viruses, and fungi live on or inside of us, and maintaining a good, balanced relationship with them is to our advantage. Together, they form the gut microbiome, a rich ecosystem that performs a variety of functions in our bodies. The bacteria in our guts can break down food the body can't digest, produce important nutrients, regulate the immune system, and protect against harmful germs. We don't yet have the blueprint for exactly which good bacteria a robust gut needs, but we do know that it's important for a healthy microbiome to have a variety of bacterial species. Many factors affect our microbiomes, including our environment, medications like antibiotics, and even whether we were delivered by C-section or not. Diet, too, is emerging as one of the leading influences on the health of our guts. And while we can't control all these factors, we can manipulate the balance of our microbes by paying attention to what we eat. Dietary fiber from foods like fruits, vegetables, nuts, legumes, and whole grains is the best fuel for gut bacteria. When bacteria digest fiber, they produce short-chain fatty acids that nourish the gut barrier, improve immune function, and can help prevent inflammation, which reduces the risk of cancer. And the more fiber you ingest, the more fiber-digesting bacteria colonize your gut. In a recent study, scientists exchanged the regular high-fiber diets of a group of rural South Africans with the high-fat, meat-heavy diets of a group of African Americans. After just 2 weeks on the high-fat, low-fiber, Western-style diet, the rural African group showed increased inflammation of the colon as well as a decrease of butyrate. That's a short-chain fatty acid thought to lower risk of colon cancer. Meanwhile, the group that switched to a high-fiber, low-fat diet had the opposite result. So what goes wrong with our gut bacteria when we eat low-fiber processed foods? Lower fiber means less fuel for the gut bacteria, essentially starving them until they die off. This results in less diversity and hungry bacteria. In fact, some can even start to feed on the mucus lining. We also know that specific foods can affect gut bacteria. In one recent microbiome study, scientists found that fruits, vegetables, tea, coffee, red wine, and dark chocolate were correlated with increased bacterial diversity. These foods contain polyphenols, which are naturally occurring antioxidant compounds. On the other hand, foods high in dairy fat, like whole milk, and sugar-sweetened sodas were correlated with decreased diversity. How food is prepared also matters. Minimally processed, fresh foods generally have more fiber and provide better fuel. So lightly steamed, sautéed, or raw vegetables are typically more beneficial than fried dishes. There are also ways of preparing food that can actually introduce good bacteria, also known as probiotics, into your gut. Fermented foods are teeming with helpful probiotic bacteria like lactobacillus and bifidobacteria. Originally used as a way of preserving foods before the invention of refrigeration, fermentation remains a traditional practice all over the world. Foods like kimchi, sauerkraut, tempeh, and kombucha provide variety and vitality to our diets. Yogurt is another fermented food that can introduce helpful bacteria into our guts. That doesn't necessarily mean that all yogurt is good for us, though. Brands with too much sugar and not enough bacteria may not actually help. These are just general guidelines. More research is needed before we fully understand exactly how any of these foods interact with our microbiomes. We see positive correlations, but the insides of our guts are difficult places to make direct observations. For instance, we don't currently know whether these foods are directly responsible for the changes in diversity, or if something more complicated is happening. While we're only beginning to explore the vast wilderness inside our guts, we already have a glimpse of how crucial our microbiomes are for digestive health. The great news is, we have the power to fire up the bacteria in our bellies. Fill up on fibers, fresh and fermented foods, and you can trust your gut to keep you going strong.
All right, so there you have it, guys. That is how foods that you eat can affect your brain and how they can affect your belly. So with seeing that, maybe I will get some dark chocolate, but I'll limit it to just that. And maybe I'll have that with some strawberries or blueberries, pineapples, things like that. So just remember, keep things in moderation, even things that are healthy for you. You can have too much of something and then your body will start to get tired of it and it won't have the same effects on your body or your dopamine levels. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, choose the right foods, guys.